This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Mali asks private Russian military company to help fight insurgents. From poverty to prosperity, China documents its journey to building a moderately prosperous society. And coronavirus infection rate drops in South Africa's Western Cape province. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business. Monthly inflation in Zimbabwe rises 4.7% in September as the local currency continues to depreciate. And Brent has gone above $80 a barrel, its highest level since October 2018, and it's rattling global markets. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thank you so much, Rama. We begin in Mali, which has asked private Russian military company, the Wagner Group, to help it fight insurgents. The country's year-old military junta says it's close to a deal. According to Mali's interim Prime Minister, Choguel Maiga, the country seeking to fill the gap left by France withdrawing troops from the Barkhane mission. In the meantime, attacks in northern Mali rage on. Hundreds of thousands of residents have been displaced. Those who've lost their lives in the ongoing violence include government soldiers. Mali's Prime Minister Choguel Maiga has justified its country's rights to seek help from other partners to boost security. In an address to the UN General Assembly, his address came amid reports that his country is close to finalizing a deal to deploy private Russian security contractors from the Wagner Group, a move France and the European Union have warned could jeopardize relations. CGTN's Robert Nagila has the details.
France had sharply criticized a deal between Mali's ruling junta and Russian private military contractors outfit, the Wagner Group, that would see Russian mercenaries deployed to the country. In July, President Emmanuel Macron announced he would withdraw at least 2,000 French troops who had been in the country since 2013 fighting militants. The European Union also warned Mali that the deployment of Russian private contractors would harm relations. But at the UN General Assembly, Mali's Prime Minister Choguel Maiga justified the move.
The new situation resulting from the end of Operation Barkhane puts Mali before a fait accompli, abandoning us mid-flight to a certain extent, and it leads us to explore pathways and means to better ensure our security autonomously or with other partners so as to fill the gap, which will certainly result from the withdrawal of Barkhane in the north of the country.
It's not the first time the Wagner Group's been mentioned in Africa. In May last year, a confidential report by independent monitors for the UN Security Council Libya Sanctions Committee said about 1,200 Wagner operatives had been active in Libya since October 2018. And in March this year, the UN accused private military contractors from the Wagner Group of committing grave human rights abuses in the Central African Republic. A statement from the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said there had been mass executions, arbitrary detentions, torture and forced displacement of civilians linked to the Wagner Group. Russia, however, denies the contents of the reports. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
We're staying with that story and are now joined by CGTN's Deji Badmose in Lagos and Stuart Smith in Moscow. Thank you so much to you both for joining us on Africa Live. Deji, let's begin with you in Lagos. Why do you think Mali has turned to a private security company for the additional support it says it needs to fight insurgents?
Well, look, Hannah, it's essentially what the Malian representative at that UN General Assembly said. What Mali is actually saying is that they're doing this just because the French have decided to scale down on Operation Barkhane. And we know that not quite long ago, President Macron announced that he would be scaling down on Operation Barkhane. The number of troops will be cut down from the current 5,000 it is now to around 2,500 between now and 2023. But the truth is that, look, even though the French government has announced it intends to do that, it hasn't done it. And scaling down the operation does not mean you're not going to have foreign troops in Mali, to support the Malian military and the Malian government. You're still going to have the Takuba force. That Takuba force will essentially be made up of European forces now, forces from different European countries. So it means France will no longer have the 5,000 it currently has. But the French government says it took that decision in consonance, in agreement with the G5 regional leaders. Mauritania, Mali itself, and the other G5 countries. So that's why the French government is actually surprised that the Malian government is saying it is taking this action because its decision to scale down on Operation Barkhane amounts to abandonment, which of course the French government has said is not true. But essentially that is what the Malian government says is the reason why it's asking the Wagner Group to come in now. But then you look at the agreement now, what is coming out to the public, the kind of agreement we understand the Malian government or the Malian military government now intends to sign with the Wagner Group. What the Wagner Group would be doing in Mali is to train some of the military forces and then provide security for the president of the military leader of that country and some top government officials. So it's something that is actually not going down well, not just with France, but also with ECOWAS as well, because ECOWAS is kicking against this and says it doesn't want it to happen. Hannah?
Deji, I'll be back with you in a moment. Thanks for that. But Stuart, let's come to you in Moscow. As we heard, the security company Mali has turned to is a Russian company. Would Wagner sign such a deal without the backing of the Kremlin?
Yeah, it's the largest private military company in Russia. And we need to look closely here at what the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said. He said that the company isn't, the Russian government was not involved with this deployment, but he did say they had a legitimate right to be in Mali because they were invited by the government. Now, these groups fall into a grey area in Russian law in many ways. There are, according to the constitution, no reasons that mercenaries or private military companies should exist. They are not allowed to. They're illegal under Russian law. And yet the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov himself, has admitted that they are working in Mali. So frankly, these companies would not be working in Mali without an implicit level of implicit level of support from the Kremlin, even if the Kremlin says that it's not backing them directly.
Stuart, I'll be back with you in a moment. Deji, let's come to you in Lagos. What is Wagner's reputation here on the African continent?
Look, Wagner does not have a good reputation, not just in Africa, but in some of the places it has operated. As we speak today, Wagner is currently operating in about 12 African countries. If you add Mali to the equation, if it eventually happens, it will bring it up to about 13. And in some cases, of course, they're not working openly. They're working under the scene. But one clear example why a lot of people on the continent will tell you they do not want Wagner, even ECOWAS too, is when you look at the track record of Wagner, for instance, in the Central African Republic. They've been accused of gross human rights abuse. They've been accused of extrajudicial killings and what have you. And most important of all, they've not in any way helped to solve the violent crisis in the Central African Republic. If nothing else, they've actually exacerbated the crisis there. And it's one of the reasons why ECOWAS leaders do not want their presence, especially in the ECOWAS region in West Africa. So they certainly do not have a good record. And to be candid, everyone is waiting to see if the Malian government would bend under the pressure of not just the French government, but ECOWAS as well and other members of the international community, because we understand even the US government does not want this, the European Union doesn't want it, and we just have to wait and see. But no doubt at all, if you were to judge on the basis of what Wagner has done in the Central African Republic and even Libya, truth is that it hasn't got a track record, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are kicking against their presence in Mali.
Well, Stuart, as we've heard from JG, Wagner having quite a presence on the African continent, why do you think the company is increasingly focused on Africa?
Yeah, we should add that Wagner deny they are operating in Libya, and they say that they are only sending instructors to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and, the CAR. But what does seem to be happening is these private military companies can take advantage of the looser restrictions in Africa. Note that I said earlier they are not able to be, they're not able legally to work in Russia, and yet these companies do need weapons and equipment. Now, they cannot procure or buy weapons and equipment through legal channels in Russia because they're not allowed to exist. So one theory that Bloomberg newspaper notes is that in Africa they can procure these weapons they cannot get elsewhere, and in return they get not just payment but access to arms. Now, the other more controversial suggestion is that these guys are working as an arm of the Russian government. Again, they deny that, and so does Russia. But Russia does have a geopolitical interest in Africa, and some of Wagner's activities could be helping to fulfill that.
Thank you so much to you both on this very complex issue. We're speaking to CGTN's Deji Badmasi in Lagos, and Stuart Smith was speaking to us from Moscow. Well, meanwhile, France's Armed Forces Minister has defended her country's counterterrorism role in Mali. Florence Parly has accused Mali's military junta of hypocrisy, bad faith, and wanting to delay a transition to democracy. Mali's military leaders had agreed to an 18-month transition period that would culminate with presidential and legislative elections in February of 2022. However, on Sunday, the interim Prime Minister, Choguel Maïga, said that date could be postponed. Since June of this year, relations between France and Mali have deteriorated. This is after France announced that it would reshape its 5,000-strong counterterrorism mission in the region. Well, China has released a white paper to mark a long-cherished goal come true, achieving moderate prosperity. The white paper combs through China's lessons in achieving the 1,000-year-old dream, while also laying down ambitious goals for the future. CGTN Sun Ye has more.
The white paper was released Tuesday to document China's epic journey from poverty to moderate prosperity, and to share its unique experience in modernization with the rest of the world. It says achieving a moderately prosperous society is the feat of all-around development. The 74-page document details progress made in 5 areas: economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological.
Completing the building of a moderately prosperous society marks a key step in the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Moderate prosperity has been a long-cherished dream of the Chinese nation. Since the founding of the CPC, it has committed to pursuing the happiness of the Chinese people and the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It has been working hard to make the life better for the people. The white paper points out that achieving the building of a moderately prosperous society has greatly enhanced the confidence and pride of the Chinese nation.
The white paper says the world has benefited and will benefit from China's development in many ways. It says a more prosperous China, as the world's most populous and largest developing country, contributes to world peace and stability. It adds that a prosperous China dramatically reduces the world's poverty-stricken population, and a China that continues to open up its economy brings win-win cooperation with the world.
The white paper says the strides China made in the past years is far from the end. It also laid down goals for the next decades. The white paper says by the year 2035, China would achieve what it calls basic socialist modernization. Per capita GDP would reach the level of moderately developed countries, and people will be even happier by then. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
The white paper also says a healthy environment is crucial for people's well-being and a prosperous society. It outlines China's strict enforcement of environmental laws and acknowledges policies are already making a difference for ecological stability and pollution control. The document also encourages a green development path and way of life. Well, South Korea's Navy says it has launched a third submarine capable of firing ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, the DPRK fired a missile into the waters off its east coast amid a call from Pyongyang for the U.S. and South Korea to end what it described as their hostile policy. Reporting from Seoul, here is Jack Barton.
South Korea's President Moon Jae-in called an emergency meeting of his national security team within hours of the DPRK's latest missile test, the sixth so far this year. The test came just before the DPRK's ambassador to the United Nations, Kim Song, urged the U.S. to give up its hostile policy towards Pyongyang, saying a road to permanent peace would not be possible until the U.S. stopped all military exercises and withdrew its strategic weapons from the peninsula. This followed statements days earlier by the DPRK leader's sister, Kim Yo-jong, that Pyongyang is open to South Korea's idea of replacing the current decades-old truce with a formal peace agreement ending the Korean War, along with a potential inter-Korean summit. But she added Seoul would have to end what she described as its double standard, a term widely viewed here as meaning Seoul should stop criticizing the DPRK's tests, which are prohibited by the UN, when South Korea is testing similar weapons. Seoul's response on Tuesday did seem more cautious than in the past.
We think the missile launch is regrettable at a time when we urgently need to stabilize the situation in the Korean peninsula.
Officials in Washington have said the U.S. is ready to hold talks with Pyongyang anywhere, anytime. But the recent flurry of statements from Seoul and Pyongyang has many analysts speculating that some sort of working-level talks may be possible soon. Jack Barton, CGTN, Seoul.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, more than 80 aid workers, including some employed by the World Health Organization, are said to have been involved in incidents of sexual abuse and exploitation during an Ebola crisis. According to an independent commission, investigators uncovered a total of 9 rape allegations. They were allegedly committed by both national and international staff. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus appointed the panel's co-chairs to investigate the claims last October after media reports claimed unnamed humanitarian officials sexually abused women during the DRC's Ebola outbreak of 2018. Tedros says 4 people have been fired and 2 placed on administrative leave as a result of the scandal. He says the report is harrowing reading and marks a dark day for the UN.
We in WHO are indeed humbled, horrified, and heartbroken by the findings of this inquiry. I'd like also to thank all the women and girls who have come forward and given evidence to the investigation and thus have given us the basis on which to take action in WHO, which has been necessary.
I'm sorry for what was done to you by people who were employed by WHO to serve and protect you. I'm sorry for the ongoing suffering that these events must cause. I'm sorry that you have had to relieve them in talking to the Commission about your experiences.
Well, CGTN's Chris Maringa now joins us for more on that story. Chris, thank you so much for being with us. What more can you tell us about this worrying report?
Well, Hannah, it's a damning report indeed. This incident, the sexual abuse cases, happened in the eastern cities of Beni and Butembo, where the country was experiencing the worst Ebola outbreak between 2018 and 2020. And it was uncovered by journalists from the Thomson Reuters Foundation and the New Humanitarian. And there were 50 women who came up and accused officials from aid agencies of raping them and offering them jobs in exchange for sex. Now, these were very serious allegations. The WHO immediately instituted a commission of inquiry to investigate and take action on the people who were found guilty. And so this is the result of about a year-long investigation that has been going on. And there are some women activists in the DRC who are very happy that this has happened, because the DRC has had a long history of sexual violence, especially in the east, and they were very disappointed that people who were supposed to be helping, end an Ebola outbreak were also involved in this very abhorrent act. And so the Congolese are very happy about what has happened, the action that has been taken by the WHO. Hannah?
Chris, what further action do you think is going to take place? And also, how has the government reacted to this report?
Well, Hannah, the government hasn't officially made any comment yet, but what we know is that last year, when these cases of sexual abuse were reported, the government said they're very closely watching and they're waiting for the inquiry carried out by independent investigators from the WHO, and that they would take action on whoever is found guilty. And so now we are waiting to hear what action they're going to take. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, earlier said that they're going to coordinate with the Congolese authorities to ensure that if there's any law that has been broken in this country, the officials who are guilty will be handed over to the leaders here so that action can be taken, because this is an incident that has really brought a lot of disrepute to the WHO that has been at the forefront of tackling so many epidemics in the DRC, and so they want it to end and end soon. Hannah?
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Chris Chamaringa, speaking to us from Kinshasa, DRC. Well, let's not take a short break. When we return, more news on Africa Live, including coronavirus infection rate drops in South Africa's Western Cape, and how a tech startup in Lagos, Nigeria, aims to ease the burden on low-income workers.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. South Africa's Western Cape province has become the latest one to report coming out of a third wave of COVID-19. Cape Town has reported a drop in the infection rate and says many hospitals are now seeing an increase in the number of beds available to patients. Some COVID-19 wards have been closed. Healthcare workers in the city say they're particularly relieved as the worst may now be over. Reporting from South Africa's mother city, here's CGTN's Travis Andrews.
The COVID-19 third wave could finally be coming to an end in the Western Cape, as cases continue to drop every day. While more than 500,000 people have been infected in the province to date, more than 47% of the adult population have now been vaccinated. The COVID-19 third wave has placed significant pressure on the healthcare system, but that now seems to be easing.
Hospital beds is becoming available now in the hospital. We really run short of hospital beds, and at least there's one or two wards that closed down now, making space for real medical condition patients. No, it's coming down.
Healthcare workers are particularly relieved that the COVID-19 third wave is coming to an end. Many have become infected, and some have lost colleagues fighting the pandemic.
We've lost a lot of staff members, and we are most of us are still getting there and still sick because of this.
I feel a little bit more relaxed, and I'm grateful that it has come down. Everyone feels happier.
So far, over 8.4 million South Africans have been vaccinated. And now that the COVID-19 infection rate has come down, the country could move to ease lockdown regulations within the coming days. While many healthcare workers are relieved that the COVID-19 third wave is finally coming to an end, many are already preparing for a COVID-19 fourth wave. Authorities hope, though, that by ramping up the vaccination rate, the effects of the fourth wave won't be as devastating as the others. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Uganda's higher learning institutions are to resume physical schooling in November as the country eases its COVID-19 restrictions. However, over 15 million learners in lower-level schools may have to wait until January of next year to return to in-person learning. Leon Senyanga reports.
Jordana Alinda wants to be in a classroom studying. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic that forced the closure of schools, she has been homeschooling. She says it's been a tedious process.
I would like to go to school because it's very hard learning on Zoom. And if you don't have enough internet, sometimes the meeting can go off.
The government is gradually easing its COVID-19 restrictions, and this kind of learning alternative may soon be over. Starting January next year, primary and secondary school students will be back in the classrooms. But that will depend on how many teachers and non-teaching staff will have received their COVID-19 vaccine. The government says it is targeting 550,000 teachers. More than half have received their first dose. Maureen Sanya is one of them. She cannot wait to get back to teaching.
I have a side business, but I was vaccinated because I really wanted my passion, my profession.
Uganda has over 15 million learners in lower-level schools. The Ministry of Education is already making plans to provide a safe environment for the learners.
To ensure that schools don't become super spreader communities for COVID-19. So we are not building new structures. Instead, we are coming up with processes to decongest. Phased reopening, studying on alternate days, and also shift system.
The government is also encouraging vaccination for students aged 18 years and above. Face-to-face learning will start this November for at least 330,000 students in post-secondary institutions. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
In Nigeria, it's estimated that 83 million people are unable to afford proper medical diagnostic services due to the high costs involved. This means that some people end up taking the wrong medication. However, one healthcare startup in Lagos says it has improved access to diagnostic and preventative services for low-income workers. With that story, here's CGTN's Adeji Badimosi.
While studying for his master's degree in the United States, Oluwasoga Oni's lecturer had challenged him to develop a business that could impact many lives. Coming from a family of medical workers and understanding the peculiar challenges of healthcare delivery in Nigeria, Oni had a clear idea of what he wanted to do: provide affordable medical diagnostic services for the millions who don't have access. He and his team of 3 began by first importing and renting out diagnostic equipment to assist hospitals provide better services. But they later switched to building diagnostic centers in communities with inadequate clinical services. And that's how their healthcare startup, MDAS Global, was born.
70% of all doctors' visits will result in a diagnostic test being done. But what we saw was that, the quality and the availability of these high-quality diagnostics across the country is so low. And even when they are available, a lot of people cannot pay for them. So there was an opportunity to build a service, a diagnostic service, that can deliver really high quality at the price points people are willing to pay.
From just one diagnostic center in 2017, MDAS Global now has 7 diagnostic centers across the country, with plans to open more.
And we have seen over, I think, 50,000 patients now, as the last time we were counting, and we've done over 80,000 medical diagnostic procedures. We currently work with over 500 facilities and over 700 doctors across the country in providing high-quality diagnostics to their hospitals. So.
The startup has also expanded to providing specialized healthcare through a service known as Sentinel X. It's a digital membership that champions preventive, personalized and continuous care for Nigerians using its proprietary technology.
Sentinel X is our preventive care product so that we can take care of people before they get sick. So a lot of what we're trying to do is prevent people from getting really, really sick with Sentinel X. The way it works is that, you sign up with Sentinel X, we do a really comprehensive annual screening for you, and then assign a doctor or a care team to you, which includes a doctor, a sentinel, which is a nurse, and other professionals such as like a dietitian or like a fitness instructor. After we see the result of your test, we're able to construct a care plan that is personalized just to you and checking with you every month.
Despite pricing their services low, some patients in low-income communities are still unable to afford them. Oni says Nigeria's increasing poverty rate is one of the major challenges his startup faces. In June, MDAS Global secured a $2.3 million funding and has since begun expanding its operations. The startup is projecting to build the largest network of physical and virtual diagnostic and primary care facilities in Africa and beyond. DG Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more on Africa Live, including the latest in sport. But for now, let's take a look at what's happening in the world of business with Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Monthly inflation in Zimbabwe goes up by nearly 5% in September as the local currency continues to depreciate. And Brent has soared well above $80 a barrel, the highest since October 2018, as the global energy crunch rattles markets.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Let's start on the world of commodities. Brent crude roared above $80 a barrel, in fact just under $81 a barrel today. The latest milestone in a global energy crisis on signs that demand is running well ahead of supply and inventories are depleting fast. The international crude oil benchmark extended a recent run of gains to the highest level since October 2018. West Texas Intermediate crude, the benchmark used in the United States, also went up around $76 a barrel. Now, oil's latest upswing has come with a flurry of bullish price predictions from bankers and traders and forecasts for surging demand this winter. And include on top of that speculation that the industry simply isn't investing enough to maintain supplies. That jump to $80 a barrel is also adding inflationary pressure to the global economy at a time when the price of energy commodities have soared. Brent by itself is up over 50% alone this year. According to Goldman Sachs, Brent prices could actually hit $90 a barrel as stock drawdowns continue to deepen. Now, new data does show that South Africa's tourism industry was hit very hard by pandemic restrictions last year. The sector is estimated to have lost at least $10 million in tourism spending last year and around 1 million jobs. According to the Bureau for Economic Research at the University of Stellenbosch, the jobs lost are not only in the tourism industry, but in many related linked sectors as well. At the moment, the recovery is being driven by local and regional travel and hospitality. Much of the international market is still unable to travel to South Africa. Occupancy rates in hotels are down, and the industry's contribution to GDP is a third of what it was before the pandemic. Elsewhere, Zimbabwe's inflation for the month of September rose 4.73% month on month. That's the highest price movement since January this year. According to data from the state-run statistics agency, that increase was driven by a jump in the food and non-alcoholic beverages component of the index. Core inflation, however, remained fairly steady. The Zimbabwean dollar has been depreciating rapidly during the past few weeks on the parallel market, and that's a development that has led to price hikes of goods and services as businesses seek to consolidate profits in local currency. Monetary authorities have struggled to contain the exchange rate movements, which have seen the Zimbabwean dollar trading at around 170 against the greenback. On to East Africa now. Kenya's tea exports rose 19% in the first half of the year to nearly 300 million kilos compared to the same period last year. Pakistan, Egypt and the United Kingdom were the top buyers of Kenyan tea. Output, however, was down 9% in the period between January and June. According to the country's sector regulator, production fell by 26 million kilos compared to the corresponding period last year due to unfavorable weather. The price of the commodity declined in the review period from $1.96 declined to $1.96 from $2.07 per kilogram previously, with the decline attributed to an increase in supply in the global market. Now let's head over to South Sudan. The government over there says that it has struck an agreement with tribal protesters, effectively allowing for the resumption of crude oil exports. Demonstrators from the Beja tribes had forced the closure of Port Sudan and the airport last week, effectively leaving South Sudan stuck with its crude with no way to get it to its market. Here's CGTN's Patrick Oyet with the latest.
The week-long blockade was expected to force the South Sudanese government to shut down oil production on Monday, but instead exports will resume after a deal was struck on Sunday with Beja tribe elders. The details of that deal have not been disclosed. Protesters had been blocking roads leading to the port in recent weeks and forcing them to shut. They are against a 2020 peace deal between the government and rebel groups, which they say marginalizes and does not represent them. South Sudan's government says it is doing all it can to ensure that oil production and export continues.
Efforts are underway to have this issue resolved so that our oil can flow. So the president also has been asked by the cabinet or requested by the cabinet to make all the necessary contacts so that the oil can continue to flow.
That blockade at Port Sudan had also cut off supply of some of the chemicals needed in the oil fields for extraction of petroleum. South Sudan is currently producing about 154,000 barrels of crude daily. Crude oil from South Sudan is now being loaded at the port for export. The resumption of trade is crucial for the South Sudan's economy, which is heavily dependent on oil proceeds to fund the day-to-day running of the country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Let's get back to South Africa. The mining companies over there have fully vaccinated slightly more than 203,000 of the sector's workers. That's roughly 45% of all working miners. Here's Angela Coppola with the details.
The major mining companies that are part of the Minerals Council are on track to vaccinate 80% of their staff.
If people are vaccinated, it does mean that at least they get a mild form of the disease and they can even be back at work, far sooner. And so it works for the employee, and I think it also works for the employer, which means you have far more stability at the workplace.
Goldfields South Africa has vaccinated 91% of their staff with the first dose, and 76% of their staff are fully vaccinated.
A lot of people talk about side effects of the vaccine. The only side effects I've seen are people are hopeful, people are positive, people can see a clear path to returning to normality. When we had times that we had up to 300 people off work that were sick, that puts a serious dent into your ability to deliver. It compromises safety. So it's a great business outcome for us. People operating normally can earn bonuses, they can earn their wages, and certainly it's the right thing for business.
Mine management understands their obligations to the community that live near its mine shafts and operations.
Some of the mines, they were doing this in tandem, both employees and the communities at the same time. So we definitely, or our members, those who have the ability and are correctly placed, have made that commitment, and they are now, in fact, starting to vaccinate communities.
We do recognize that we will not be able to create an island of excellence or an island of immunity without involving the community in general and society in general. So from our safety programs, our health programs, and our COVID vaccination programs, we do support the community in all of those to involve them, recognizing that what happens at Impala as the island needs to happen around us.
Vaccine distribution is a challenge in South Africa at the moment, and it's even worse in the rural and deep rural areas. And it's only the mines that operate in certain parts of the country that are acting as a lifeline to those people who need vaccines.
Away from the continent, as the US President Joe Biden engages in a broader review of trade policies towards China, a study published earlier this month shows that the tariff measures from the last round of the trade war did not drive American enterprises wholesale out of China. In a paper jointly written by two scholars in the United States, 22% of 500 multinationals, American multinationals, surveyed in China voiced the opposition to increased tariffs, but only 7% of them decided to leave China. The study also noted that American and Chinese enterprises remain deeply integrated despite the trade war, and the cost from the tariffs had basically just been passed along to consumers. And our final story for this segment, China's industrial sector has seen relatively stable progress over the last few months, even though sporadic COVID outbreaks, high commodity prices, high transportation costs do remain significant challenges. Fresh data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that the profits of China's major industrial firms went up by nearly 50% year on year in the first 8 months of 2021. In August alone, they went up by 10% on a yearly basis, and they jumped 30% compared to the same period in 2019. High-tech manufacturing, mining, raw material processing, these were among the top profit earners. I'll leave you there for the time being, but we'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be talking about aviation when we return. Kenya Airways and South African Airways, once upon a time two of Africa's largest airlines, they have decided to come together to create a Pan-African airline group, at least in the long run. Now, the move by these two loss-making carriers to sign a memorandum of cooperation comes a fortnight after African Airlines agreed to pursue a consolidation model in order to make themselves a lot more viable. But will this actually work? We'll be live in Johannesburg with the details on that and plenty more. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Hannah.
We'll see you then, Rama. Well, let's not take a short break and return. More in Africa Live, including over 60 African endangered penguins killed by swarm of bees in South Africa.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you. All around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
We head over to South Africa now, where dozens of endangered African penguins have been killed by a swarm of Cape honeybees along a Cape Town beach. The freak deaths were discovered at the Boulders Beach penguin colony. A subsequent investigation pointed to the endemic bee species as the unlikely culprits behind the killings. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports.
The Boulders Beach penguin colony is one of a few critical breeding grounds along South Africa's coastline. It has now, though, been hit by tragedy after dozens of endangered African penguins were killed by a swarm of Cape honeybees. The incident, which has been described as a first in South Africa, has left many conservationists concerned.
We were worried that it could be some disease or so, as we are having currently some issues with avian influenza in some of our wild seabirds. So we took these birds to Sankob to do post-mortem analysis and take samples to send them off for testing. And our researcher and our veterinarian then found all these bee stings in these birds around especially around the eyes where they have this bare patch of skin. And then they actually went back on site and found the dead bees.
The Cape honeybees are an endemic species in the Western Cape. Their hives can even be found in built-up areas. Some dead penguins were found with as many as 20 bee stings, and no external injuries were observed on the rest of the colony. The deaths so come at a time when more protection is being sought to prevent the African penguin species from going extinct.
So currently at Boulders we have about 1,000 breeding pairs, so 60 dead birds, which basically probably equates to 60 nests, is actually quite a large number. And especially seeing the threat status of the species. I mean, we are losing several thousand breeding pairs every year in South Africa currently. We are at the lowest ever recorded numbers of breeding pairs with just over 10,000 birds, 10,000 pairs. So losing 60 is tragic.
Experts say the deaths of the penguins can best be described as a freak event. And even though there are many beehives situated around their colony, the chances of another fatal encounter is extremely rare. They do stress though that due to their significantly low numbers, the deaths are a big blow for penguin conservation. That was Andrew, CGTN, Cape Town.
I'll kick off our sports segment tonight with the story of Congolese skater Sergei Makolo. He lost all his roller skating equipment when his house was buried by the volcanic eruption in his hometown of Goma. However, the disaster didn't quench the 25-year-old's enthusiasm for the sport. Makolo trains 5 days a week, waking up at dawn to train with 100 other roller skaters. CGTN's Nohutula Chabalala brings us his story.
5 mornings per week, around 100 young people slip into Lycra, strap on speed skates and jockey for space with charcoal lorries, aid agency 4x4s and chukudus, Goma's famous wooden scooters. Despite the challenges, Serge Makolo and his friends are undaunted, with 5 of them setting their sights on the 2022 Francophone Games, which are to be held in Congo's capital, Kinshasa. When the Nyiragongo volcano erupted in May, Makolo only had time to grab his roller skates and a fistful of medals before the magma swallowed his house on the outskirts of Goma in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
The east of the DRC has experienced many problems such as wars and several difficulties such as the eruption of the volcano. Skating can comfort us and make us forget the bad things that have happened to us, especially the young people. The stresses of wars and eruptions evaporates as we ride. Skating makes us feel alive and feel reborn again. It's very important to the lives of young people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and especially those in the east.
Roller speed skating appeared in the 2018 Youth Olympic Games, so Makolo is hopeful that if it becomes a full Olympic sport, he could add a gold medal to his collection. Large portions of the city's roads remain unmetalled or are scarred with potholes. But as the city's roads have improved, so too have the opportunities to skate. But the cost of equipment remains prohibitive.
The equipment is really expensive. We have to make a lot of sacrifices to buy the equipment. That's where we have a lot of problems. Even if there aren't many streets for skating, it's the biggest challenge for us.
For Daniel Kachunga, president of North Kivu Province's Roller Skate League, the Francophone Games will be a chance to show people a different side of his homeland.
We in sports talk about what we practice daily. This will be another way for us to show the world that the DRC is not only about wars, and that the province of North Kivu is not only wars, not only conflicts, not only the volcano, but also there are good sides of our province, especially the athletes. There are young people active in sports and who are able to show what young Congolese are capable of in the field of sports. And there I see roller skating.
Makolo, who has won medals at a number of local and regional meets, is waiting to win another competition so he can get money to rebuild his academy. He hopes by doing so, he will be able to rebuild the dreams of many youth in Goma from the ashes of the devastating volcano. Noktula Shabalala, CGTN.
Namibia's senior men's cricket team will make their first ever appearance at the ICC T20 World Cup in October, where the side known as the Eagles will face Sri Lanka, the Netherlands and Ireland in the first round. The excited squad departed over the weekend, and CGTN CS Duplessis spoke with the coach Pierre de Bruin and filed this report.
Namibia head coach Pierre de Bruin and his charges have worked extremely hard to qualify for the global tournament and will take their place among world cricket's elite in a bid to prove that qualifying was not a flash in the pan and that it was as a result of playing competitive cricket and backing themselves to reach their long-term objective.
It is. I've got to just remind myself now and then. Quite nervous, to be honest. You know, it's for any coach, you would feel that the expectations will be right up there. Although people might argue that it's only Namibia, but it's not anymore. But yeah, I'm very excited, and I'm more excited for these players. You know, it's the first ever T20 World Cup. They're going to say it's history. You know, they're going to be in the history books.
Captain Gerard Erasmus is confident that his teammates can live up to the expectations of playing on the biggest stage of their careers and prove that they are there to compete and not just make up the numbers.
You want to be as clear in your mind as possible going into tournament cricket, and you want your roles really defined. And you know, if you go out with that clarity in a short knockout tournament like we're going to be playing in the groups, the pool stages of the World Cup, that's just so important for us to go there and know what our game plan is and you know, hit the tournament hard.
The future appears bright for Namibian cricket, but a positive performance at the T20 World Cup will solidify that foundation that has already been built and set the sport on a well-deserved upward trajectory.
We've got a massive job ahead of us for Cricket Namibia and for Namibia as a cricket nation. It's critical for us to advance. We know the impact that it's going to have on the country and cricket in the country, not just us, but women's cricket, our whole pathway, school cricket, club cricket. We know how important that is.
The Namibian team go into their final T20 World Cup preparations having won 20 out of their last 24 games and will be full of confidence ahead of their 6 warm-up matches before they officially make their debut against Sri Lanka on the 18th of October. And the cricket minnows from Southern Africa are determined to cause an upset in the UAE because the Eagles maintain they're not at the World Cup to make up the numbers, but instead to compete for a place in the second round of the competition, where, as the saying goes, anything can happen. CS Duplessis, CGTN, Centurion, South Africa.
Newly crowned world heavyweight boxing champion Alexander Usyk expects a rematch against Anthony Joshua in February or March and hopes to unify the division afterwards. The Ukrainian defeated Joshua in a boxing masterclass at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London on Saturday in front of 67,000 fans, earning a unanimous point decision to take his British rivals WBA, WBO, IBF and IBO belts. A former undisputed cruiserweight world champion and Olympic gold medalist, the 34-year-old Usyk came home to a hero's welcome after defeating Joshua. He follows in the footsteps of compatriots Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko, who dominated the division for a decade from 2004 to 2015.
At the moment I have 4 belts. 3 main ones, WBA, WBO and IBF. The 4th one is IBO, which is not the main belt, it's like an extra one. But the main 4th belt is with Tyson Fury at the moment. We can talk about unification of all the belts only after Tyson Fury will have a boxing match with Deontay Wilder and they determine the champion, and also after our rematch with Anthony Joshua. So of course I would like very much to have this unification fight.
Well, still in football, the UEFA Champions League returns tonight with French giants Paris Saint-Germain hosting English Premier League champions Manchester City in a Group A clash at the Parc des Princes. PSG were widely criticized for their performance in their opening match, a 1-1 draw away at Club Brugge in Belgium a fortnight ago, while City trounced RB Leipzig 6-3. That means a failure to beat Pep Guardiola's team will put PSG in a potentially tricky situation, at least when it comes to advancing top of their group. PSG have had a perfect start in the French Ligue 1, winning all 8 matches so far this